I had to share this story where I was backstage. I'm working on my Redneck Page a Day calendars. And so Larry stops by the dressing room and he said, "What are you working on?" I said, "The Page a Day calendars." He said, "How many years have you done those things?" And I was thinking back, I did the first one in 1990 and I'm working on the one for 2012. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, how do you keep thinking of redneck jokes?" And sadly, the answer is all I do is go to family functions. That being said, I have to share this story with you. A few months back, I got an invitation to my cousin Sherry's wedding in Alabama. And I got the feeling that it was a hurry-up wedding because the invitation was a fax. And at the bottom, somebody had written BYOLC, which we learned meant bring your own lawn chair. Because apparently they were getting married in my Uncle Wayne's backyard because I think the OBGYN told them they didn't have 6 weeks to wait on the church. And so my mother was over at my house that day visiting, and I started making jokes about it being a hurry-up wedding. Well, my mother got mad, and she said, "Don't you dare say anything about Sherry. She's the sweetest girl on the planet. She never tells anybody no about anything." Pretty much why we're having to go to Alabama now. And my mother knows everything. And I said, "Well, Mother, how did she even meet this guy?" My mother said, "Well, they met in a laundromat." So you know right there it was anointed by God. But apparently Sherry needed change for the dryer. And she said this guy Dustin just walked over and gave her half a roll of quarters. So I'm pretty sure then under Alabama law, she was required to have sex with him. And my mother wants to go to the wedding, and she wants us to take her because she doesn't like to drive on the interstate or through swamps. And I can't tell my mother no, and so I said, "Well, take her." Well, immediately my mother starts pitching for us to stay at my Uncle Ray Ray and Aunt Tina's house. And I don't want to do this because I'm allergic to ferrets. And so I said, "Mom, why don't we just stop at the Motel 6 in Dothan, Alabama?" And my mother said, and I quote, "Well, I don't want people thinking we're uppity." Which is a possibility in my family. One year at the family reunion, my brother brought 3 buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and all day long people were like, "What's up, Donald Trump?" So at the risk of being uppity, we stopped at the Motel 6 in Dothan, Alabama. And if I had known that it was chili cook-off weekend, I would have called ahead for reservations because they only had 1 room available. And from the smell of it, some of the past chili cook-off winners had stayed there. But when they said 1 room, in my mind, I'm thinking 2 double beds. Well, we get to the room and there is 1 king-size bed for me, my wife, and my mother. And my wife is not happy because she knows she's in the middle. She's the Berlin Wall, because if I wake up spooning with the wrong person, it is going to take years of therapy to get me back right again. Well, you learn things when you're on the road, and that weekend I learned that the walls of the Motel 6 in Dothan, Alabama are apparently made out of toilet paper because the couple in the room next to us liked each other. A lot. And loudly. And me, my wife, and my mother lay in that king-size bed and listened to them like each other for an hour and a half. At which point, my wife tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You need to do something." I said, "I'm about to walk next door and ask for his autograph." Are you kidding? An hour and a half? That's 2 years' work for me. Well, the next morning when we're getting ready, I hear them leaving the room. Well, I want to see them. Because you listen to this, you get this mental image of what they look like. So I go over and crack our door and peek out in the hall. I wish I had never done it. Oh, they were big uns. Big uns. I think half the moaning and groaning was them trying to take their socks off. So we leave the hotel, we drive down to my Uncle Wayne's house, and there's cars everywhere. So we park down the street. Well, as we're walking up the driveway, there's a pickup truck in the driveway, and it looks like somebody is passed out against the passenger window. I'm like, what the heck? And I walk up. seatbelt on it. In the car, there is a dead deer, and the doors are locked. I walk in the house, I said, what is the deal with the dead deer in the truck? And my cousin Scott said, well, we hid it on the way over here, but I didn't want to leave it in the bed because I thought somebody might steal it. What does that say about my family? He thinks somebody might steal a deer out of the truck at a family wedding. Well, we visit a while, and then they tell everybody to grab their lawn chairs, and we go out in the backyard. I am not making this up. The altar for the wedding is the redwood deck of the above-ground pool, and the entire pool and the deck are covered in colored Christmas lights. I leaned over to my brother and said, I wonder how long it took to put up the wedding decorations. And he said, well, we were here 2 years ago, and they were up then, so I don't think they ever come down. You might be a redneck. So they start the ceremony, and my cousin Sherry, who is 8 months pregnant, comes out in a snow white wedding dress. I'm looking up for a big star or 3 guys riding camels up the driveway. And the irony of this is lost on my mother, who leans over and goes, that's the same dress her mother got married in. And I'm doing the math, and the only answer I can come up with is ho squared. Well, they do the ceremony, then they have the reception there in the same backyard, and the DJ is one of the groomsmen who is now wearing tuxedo pants and no shirt, and he is lighting firecrackers with his cigarette and throwing them at Sherry's grandmother's feet just to hear her cuss. And Sherry's mother is walking around with a big box full of birdseed in Ziploc bags, giving them out to people because she said Sherry read online that if the birds eat rice and then drink water, the rice expands and it can kill the birds. And to this day, I haven't had the heart to tell her that 2 hours after they left, I saw her little brothers in the front yard shooting the birds with pellet guns. So, and most people, when they leave, they just jump in the car and drive off. Not my family. Sherry and Dustin get in his Camaro and proceed to do donuts in my Uncle Wayne's front yard. And the third time around, her door flew open. And I'm standing next to her grandmother, who threw her beer on the ground and said, if this lasts 6 months, I'll kiss a good man's ass. So, Jeff, where do you come up with those redneck jokes?